Why? The ancient handbag symbol appears in Sumer, Egypt, and Mesoamerica, across Iman terrain, carved into the bones of temples and whispered through the mouths of myth. A peculiar symbol lingers, one so simple in form, yet so persistent in presence that it refuses to be forgotten. A rectangular pouch with a rounded handle. The shape is unassuming, easily dismissed, and yet it appears everywhere. From the weathered stones of Gobekli Tepe to the ritual walls of Assyria, the jungle temples of Mesoamerica, and even within the oral cosmologies of Polynesian seafarers, scholars call it a handbag. But what it truly carried, if anything, remains a riddle cradled in the palm of our forgotten ancestors. It begins at Gobekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey. 13,000 years ago, before the wheel, before written language, before the first grain of cultivated wheat, there stood a circle of stone. Monolithic T-shaped pillars rose like sentinels, their surfaces etched with vultures, wild boars, scorpions, serpents, and amid these beasts of myth and bone, small, rectangular carvings lined side by side. They don't roar or strike. They do not dominate the scene. And yet, once seen, they become inescapable. The handbags, they are carved plainly, square or rectangular bottoms, with an arched handle atop, 3 of them in a row, suspended in space as if hanging from invisible hands. At first glance, they seem decorative, incidental, but like all sacred symbols, it is their placement, not just their form, that commands our attention. These pouches appear near predators, beneath birds of prey, alongside humanoid figures that defy easy classification. They are not tools of war, nor adornments of status. They are quiet, subtle, repetitive, and for a people who had no cities, no metallurgy, and no domesticated animals, the mere existence of this sanctuary and its symbols redefines what we know of pre-agricultural consciousness. What were these hunter-gatherers trying to tell us? If these bags were practical items, why memorialize them in sacred stone? If they were merely ritual accessories, why repeat them across pillars that echo cosmic alignment and animal worship? Some suggest they were containers for offering seeds, ash, hallucinogenic plants. Others believe they signified a cosmological archetype, a vessel not of grain or incense, but of understanding. Perhaps this is the essence of the symbol. It does not need to explain itself. It merely appears, again and again, as if to whisper, "There was a pattern once, and you've forgotten." Ancient philosophers, particularly those influenced by Hermeticism, often taught that reality itself is shaped in symbols. As above, so below. Hermes Trismegistus would say, "The micro reflects the macro." The pouch, simple, held, carried, could be the symbol of the self as vessel, the body containing soul, the earth containing sky, the seen cradling the unseen. Gobekli Tepe, then, may not simply be the world's first temple. It may be a library a forgotten meaning, written not in script, but in form. Its pillars don't just bear weight, they bear memory. And perhaps, within the shape of a modest stone handbag, we are being asked to remember what the earliest among us once knew, that to carry is also to contain, and to contain is sacred. Centuries turned, empires rose, and language began to take shape. Yet the symbol endured. Thousands of years after Gobekli Tepe, in the sun-baked halls of ancient Assyria, a parallel vision emerged, this time not hidden among beasts and birds, but placed openly into the hands of beings not quite human. At Nineveh, at Nimrud, and within the grand reliefs that lined the palaces of Ashurnasirpal and Sargon, we find them, winged genies, standing tall with sculpted elegance, each holding two objects, one in each hand. In one, a pine cone, small and spiked. In the other, a bucket, or perhaps a handbag. The motif is unmistakable. The bucket is square, with a single curved handle. It is the same symbol seen millennia before in the stone of Gobekli Tepe. But here, the object has found function. It is no longer abstract. It is no longer silent. Assyrian scholars tell us the cone and bucket were used in rituals of purification, sprinkling holy water, pollen, or sacred oil over kings, trees, and temples. The winged figures, perhaps genies or spirits of wisdom, conducted ceremonies that blessed the land and its rulers. The pine cone, likely representing the male flower of the date palm, was dipped into the handbag, and with a sacred gesture, the contents were scattered. But what, precisely, was being poured? More than water, more than pollen. These rituals were acts of cosmological balance. In the ancient world, fertility wasn't just about crops. It was about harmony between human and earth, ruler and sky, body and spirit. The handbag, in this light, becomes more than a vessel. It becomes a mediator, a portable temple, a cosmic tool. Assyrian theology, rich with layers of symbolism, treated the world not as a dead machine, but as a breathing organism. Every act had spiritual consequence. Every ritual echoed the eternal. When the genie sprinkled the sacred contents from the bucket, it was not simply action, it was intention crystallized. The very act of holding the pouch signified authority over the invisible. It is worth noting that in these depictions, the handbag is never laid aside. It is always carried, always raised, always central to the ritual. The philosopher Plotinus once said, "We must not run after it, but we must let it enter into us." He spoke of the divine, of the one. And in these Assyrian scenes, the sacred appears not as thunder or flame, but as pollen, gently falling from the fingers of a winged priest. The divine enters not through violence, but through ritual, through symbol, through intention made visible. There is elegance in this, how something so ordinary as a container becomes, through repetition and reverence, a link between the human and the eternal. And again, we return to the shape, that same box, that same arc of a handle, that same silhouette held high, separated by time, yet inseparable in form. If Gobekli Tepe asked the question, Assyria began to answer it. The handbag is not merely for storage, it is a vessel of transition between the sacred and the mundane, between what is seen and what must be felt. It is the hand that gives, and the bag that carries what cannot be held. Half a world away, beneath the canopy of tropical forests and cloaked in the mist of ancient memory, another civilization rose unconnected by trade, time, or terrain to the Near East. And yet, here too, the symbol appears. In the stone monuments of the Olmec, the Maya, and later the Toltecs, carved into massive stelae and temple friezes, we find figures, kings, gods, warriors, each depicted in a moment of action or power. And in their hands, we often see it again. The box with a handle, the handbag. In Mesoamerica, these stone bags are never passive. They dangle from strong hands, held with purpose. A figure strides forward, one arm raised to the heavens, the other clutching the pouch. These are not farmers. They are not merchants. These are beings of importance, intermediaries, bearers of something invisible, something vital. The resemblance to the bags in Assyrian reliefs is more than coincidental. It is striking. The scale, the form, the positioning within ritual and authority contexts. Yet how could this be? There is no record of cultural exchange between Sumer and the Olmec. No known maritime journeys from Nineveh to the Gulf of Mexico. And yet here, among the ruins of Laventa and Copan, the same image emerges as if memory itself had migrated on the wind. Some scholars dismiss the resemblance as accidental. What is more universal than a container? Bags existed in all cultures, but this argument misses the deeper point. The question is not whether ancient people used bags. Of course they did. The question is why the symbol of the bag carved in stone, elevated in ritual, repeats across civilizations that never met. In Mesoamerican cosmology, everything carried meaning. Objects were not just tools, they were extensions of spiritual intent. A mask represented a god, a staff symbolized rulership, and a pouch especially, one depicted in ritual scenes, was likely to carry more than herbs or cornmeal. In some Maya texts, small bags are referenced as sahumal, vessels for copal incense used in temple ceremonies. These were not accessories. They were instruments of communion between human breath and divine response. Is it possible, then, that this handbag shape became a kind of archetype, a visual shorthand for the sacred vessel, a form passed not by sailors or scribes, but through the collective unconscious of humanity? Carl Jung spoke of archetypal symbols, images that appear independently across cultures because they express something universal within the human psyche. The mother, the serpent, the tree of life. Perhaps the handbag joins this gallery of timeless symbols, the container of mystery, the keeper of knowledge, the bag that holds what cannot be seen, only felt, And there's something else, something less academic, more intuitive. When you stand before a stela in Palenque and see a ruler gripping that strange little pouch, it feels significant. It feels like a sign, a glyph without a glossary, a message left in the open that we've forgotten how to read. So we ask, is this convergence of symbols a coincidence? Or does it hint at a forgotten thread, a legacy of an ancient teaching that once spanned the globe? Perhaps memory does not travel in caravans. Perhaps it travels in dreams, far from the temples of Mexico and the palaces of Assyria. Across the vast expanse of ocean lie the islands of New Zealand, home to the Maori people and their rich oral traditions. Here, the handbag takes on a new form not carved in stone, not held in ritual posture, but woven into stories, into memory. In Maori cosmology, there is a tale of Maui, a cultural hero, demi-god, and bringer of knowledge. According to legend, Maui did not merely fish up islands or slow the sun. He ventured into the realm of the divine and returned carrying 3 sacred baskets. These baskets were not filled with fruit or gold. They overflowed with knowledge, known as the Keat of knowledge. Each basket contained a different kind of wisdom, one for rituals and prayers, another for ancestral lore, and the third for practical skills such as planting, navigation, and craftsmanship. Together, they represented a complete cosmology, a trinity of learning essential for life, survival, and spiritual evolution. The symbolic form of these baskets, rectangular with rounded handles, bears an uncanny resemblance to the handbag motif found across the ancient world. But unlike stone carvings frozen in time, the Maori kete lives on through the language and song. It is not just seen, it is told, passed from elder to child, from generation to generation. The sacred container becomes an idea, a metaphor, a map. And once again, we are confronted with the question, why this shape? Why this motif? The philosopher Mircea Eliade once argued that sacred symbols endure not because they are logical, but because they are meaningful. They survive the erosion of language and empire because they encode truth in form, not formula. The basket, then, like the handbag, becomes a symbol of holding, of carrying that which is too fragile, too precious to leave unguarded. The 3 kete in Maori tradition are not simply repositories of knowledge, they are channels of transmission. Each one a bridge between realms, between gods and mortals, between sky and earth, between memory and future. In this light, the handbag reappears not as artifact, but as archetype, the vessel of wisdom, the portable temple, the memory made tangible, and the similarities deepen when we consider the purpose. In Assyria, the bucket carried holy pollen. In Mesoamerica, it may have held copal incense. In Maori lore, it contains divine teaching. All 3 serve the same function: to carry the sacred, to protect what must be passed on, to hold the unseen until it can be revealed. But more than that, The Keat reminds us that not all knowledge is written in books. Some of it is woven, spoken, remembered, and perhaps, just perhaps, the reason this symbol appears so universally is not because it was spread across oceans, but because it was already within us. The sacred container is not just an object. It is a principle. We are the vessels. We carry what was given. We decide what is forgotten and what survives. Traveling northward into the cradle of civilization, we arrive in ancient Egypt, a land where symbols were not simply artistic flourishes, but the very DNA of communication. Hieroglyphs, those intricate pictorial scripts, were more than language. They were magic, mathematics, myth, and memory combined. And among the thousands of glyphs etched into limestone tombs and temple walls, we find it again. The pouch, the ark, the form that now feels familiar, like a traveler arriving unannounced, yet somehow already known. The hieroglyph in question appears deceptively simple: a rectangular base, a curved handle arching above. Often translated by Egyptologists as bag, offering stand, or altar, the glyph appears alongside offerings, gods, pharaohs, and ritual scenes. Sometimes it hangs from a priest's belt. Sometimes it rests beside sacred tools. Sometimes it is positioned beneath a divine name carried like a shadow of purpose. Yet even with its seemingly mundane appearance, this symbol, too, eludes final definition. What did the Egyptians mean when they etched it beside Ra's cartouche, or when it was placed near the Ankh, the symbol of eternal life? One theory suggests the glyph represents a portable shrine, a miniature tent, or divine dwelling. The curved handle might symbolize the poles of a nomadic shelter, while the rectangular base represents the canvas stretched across the sacred frame. This reading aligns with a profound concept that divinity is not fixed in place, but carried. That the gods do not merely reside in pyramids or temples, but journey with the faithful. If so, then this symbol is not a handbag in the modern sense. It is a home for the sacred, a representation of the idea that holiness can travel. That sanctuary is not only spatial, but spiritual. In Egyptian thought, sacred space was created through intention and ritual, not just architecture. A priest with the right incantation, carrying the right tools, became the temple. The gods could descend upon him. And thus, the glyph representing this container may not hold incense or scrolls at all. It may hold presence, divine availability, a portable connection to the infinite. And still, this shape echoes others we've seen. The Gobekli Tepe handbags, subtle in their repetition. The Assyrian buckets, heavy with ritual. The Mesoamerican pouches, clutched by priests and rulers. The Maori baskets, brimming with mythic wisdom. Across epochs, cultures, and continents. This form reappears not as a coincidence, but as continuity. Why? Because it encodes something deeper. Something that ancient Egyptian priesthood understood well. That the physical world is only half the story. Symbols are the other half. They are how spirit touches matter, how meaning incarnates, how the divine whispers through the veil. And so this glyph, carved into stone by scribes under the hot Egyptian sun, may carry more than its simple outline suggests. It may represent a promise that the sacred can be carried, that what is holy is not confined to temples or scrolls, but borne by those who choose to carry it. The symbol becomes a reminder. You are the shrine, your body the tent, your life the altar. And once again, a question stirs beneath the sands of time. How did this one shape, this humble pouch, find its way into so many stories of the sacred? We have followed the symbol from carved stones in Turkey to incense, laden temples in Mesopotamia, from the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica to the woven mythologies of Polynesia and the hieroglyphs of Egypt. Each appearance of the handbag shape beckons the same question. What was inside? Were they truly carrying bags, or were they carrying something deeper? Many researchers propose practical answers. These pouches, they argue, held ritual items, incense, pollen, sacred water, medicinal herbs. In Assyria, the cone dipped into the bucket was part of a fertility rite. In Mesoamerica, similar bags may have contained offerings or tools of divine communion. In Egypt, perhaps a censer or a compact altar. But even if we accept these explanations, they do not explain why the form itself was so revered, so consistently carved into stone, so ritually repeated. Because if these were merely bags, why give them such symbolic weight? There is a principle in ancient philosophy known as correspondence as above, so below. Hermes Trismegistus taught that the physical is a mirror of the metaphysical. The vessel, therefore, is never just a container, it is an idea. And this is where the handbag transforms. It becomes a sacred vessel. In every culture, sacred vessels carry more than matter, they carry meaning. The Ark of the Covenant carried divine law. The Grail, in later mythologies, carried eternal life, even in the East. The alms bowl of the Buddha becomes a symbol of emptiness and enlightenment. In each case, the vessel reflects the nature of the sacred. It contains, it preserves, and it transmits. So what if these handbags, stone, carved, symbolically wielded, ritually charged, represent more than any literal substance? What if they are metaphors, containers of consciousness? Imagine a ceremony where the pouch is not filled with pollen, but with prayer, not with herbs, but with intention. Imagine it as a cosmic toolkit, each item within symbolizing the alignment of human and divine, the visible and invisible. The rituals in which these vessels were used were not merely agricultural, they were spiritual technologies designed to align body, earth, and cosmos. Modern minds may scoff at such notions, dismissing them as poetic or primitive. But in doing so, we overlook a truth that ancient peoples honored: that ritual is a language, and symbols are its grammar. Even the shape of the bag speaks its mystery: a square base, a curved arc. As discussed by symbologist Richard Scranton, these are not arbitrary forms. The square is the material world Earth, structure, form. The arc, or dome, is the heavens, the unseen, the spirit, the sky. To combine them is to unite opposites, heaven and earth, flesh and spirit, the known and the unknowable. Thus, the handbag becomes a cosmogram, a visual expression of unity, a silent sermon carved in stone. And as it is passed down from Gobekli to Nineveh, from Oaxaca to Alexandria, it becomes more than a cultural artifact. It becomes a code, a persistent icon through which ancient minds communicated something that could not be written in words, only carried in form. So perhaps what they carried was not just substance, but symbol, not just tool, but truth. And the question returns, like a ritual chant echoing through the centuries: what do we carry today? What do we preserve in our modern vessels, our minds, our rituals, our art? If the ancients handed us this symbol as a gift across time, then the real contents of the handbag may be waiting in us. In the ancient world, shape was never incidental. Geometry was sacred. Proportion was divine. Whether in temple architecture, ritual tools, or symbolic art, the ancients encoded metaphysical truths into physical forms. And so, to truly understand the handbag motif, we must look beyond material function and ask, what does the shape itself teach us? Let us observe it again. A box, rectangular, grounded, stable, and above it, a perfect arca handle, a dome, a curve. To modern eyes, this is a bag. To ancient minds, this may have been the universe. Philosopher and symbol expert Richard Scranton proposed an interpretation that redefines the handbag as a cosmic diagram, a unification of the material and immaterial, a visual fusion of opposites. According to him, square or angular shapes represent the earthly, the tangible, tools, dwellings, the body. Curves and domes represent the celestial, the intangible, the spirit, the heavens, the soul. When placed together, square base, arched top, the image becomes a symbolic vessel that holds both realms. This is not a new idea. In sacred architecture across the world, this fusion is everywhere. The square base of a Hindu temple represents the earth, while the towering spire shikara represents the ascent to heaven. In Christian cathedrals, the nave is rectangular, grounding the space, while the dome above mimics the sky, inviting the divine. The Kaaba in Mecca, the pagodas of the East, even the Great Pyramids, all reflect this interplay between grounded form and transcendent aspiration. So what if the handbag is a microcosm of this same idea? A portable cosmos, a handheld temple, a sacred silhouette that does not merely contain objects, but embodies balance, the harmony of seen and unseen, of body and soul, of man and the divine. In this view, the ancient handbag is no more a literal object than the yin-yang or the ankh. It is a visual teaching, passed down through time in the only language that transcends translation, shape. And this may explain why it appears everywhere. Because regardless of geography, every human being feels the tension between the earth they stand on and the sky they look up to. Regardless of tribe or tongue, we all seek to carry within us a space that holds both the sacred and the mundane. The handbag symbol becomes a mirror of this condition, a reminder that we are vessels capable of holding contradiction, mystery, and meaning. In many mythologies, the gods did not live in palaces, they lived in portable forms: fire, cloud, box, staff, drum, bowl. The most sacred things were not static, they were carried. This is the spiritual weight of the symbol. It does not ask to be interpreted with logic, but with resonance. Like a mantra, its power lies in repetition, each culture rediscovering the shape, reinventing it, re-sacralizing it through ritual, story, and stone. And perhaps that is the symbol's greatest power. It does not belong to any one civilization. It belongs to consciousness itself. For some, the recurring handbag motif is not a symbol to be decoded, but a clue to a far greater mystery, one that challenges the entire structure of conventional history. They argue, what if these images don't simply resemble modern bags by coincidence? What if they are exactly what they appear to be? A handbag, a tool, a device. Some see in these ancient carvings the unmistakable outline of technology, a compact, handheld object with a handle, carried by figures who are not always fully human. Winged genies, serpent-headed gods, astral beings. They point to depictions of figures seemingly operating machines, pressing buttons, or holding what resemble modern gadget screens, styluses, even something that looks eerily like a cell phone. Could it be that these handbags held more than pollen or prayers? Could they have contained energy, knowledge, devices? Could they have been batteries, communication tools, or containers of light objects left behind by a lost civilization far more advanced than we've imagined? This theory finds its most vocal proponents among authors like Graham Hancock, Zecharia Sitchin, and theorists in the ancient astronaut community. They believe that a civilization, perhaps pre-Ice Age, perhaps extraterrestrial in origin, seeded human societies with key elements of knowledge agriculture, writing, astronomy, and marked their influence with symbols. The handbag, they say, is one such marker, a signature, if you will, of the bearers of wisdom. According to ancient Sumerian myth, the Apkallu divine sages sent by the god Enki emerged after a great flood to restore knowledge to humanity. These beings, often shown holding a handbag and wearing fish like cloaks, taught humanity the laws of civilization. Strikingly, similar stories exist across the world. 7 sages of India, 7 survivors in Polynesian myths, the watchers of Enochian tradition, all carrying wisdom, all descending from elsewhere, and all, somehow, holding the same mysterious object. It is tempting to dismiss these ideas as fantasy. After all, they challenge the accepted academic view. But fantasy or not, these interpretations tap into something primal, our deep, intuitive sense that we are missing something, that the past holds secrets not yet revealed, that perhaps we are not the pinnacle of knowledge, but the inheritors of forgotten greatness. We must tread carefully here. Not every carved pouch is proof of a time traveler. Not every symbol is a circuit board. But in our caution, we should not close the door completely. The repetition of the handbag symbol across continents and eras demands that we ask the forbidden question. What if the myths are not metaphors? What if the gods were real, not as omnipotent beings, but as those who knew, those who carried the fire of understanding, those who handed down seeds of transformation? Then the handbag is not a tool of ancient magic, nor futuristic tech, but both, a symbol of the transmission of power, of memory carried through the ages, not by text, not by monument, but by form. And whether this power came from the stars, from a forgotten Atlantis, or from deep within the human soul, what matters is that it was carried. Again, the shape reminds us, to carry something is to give it meaning. To hold something is to protect it. The bearer becomes a bridge, and the object a message. Perhaps that is why we keep seeing the bag, not because it was common, but because it was precious. To those who dare look beyond the boundaries of Orthodox history, few names carry as much weight as Graham Hancock, a modern-day seeker among the ruins of the past. Hancock has spent decades questioning the standard timeline of human civilization, his central claim, that we are a species with amnesia. In Hancock's view, the handbag symbol may be more than just a recurring image. It may be the calling card of a lost civilization, one not confined to a single region or culture, but a mother culture, long forgotten, whose survivors traveled the world after a cataclysmic disaster, perhaps a comet impact or a flood at the end of the last ice age, bringing with them the seeds of what we now call civilization. He points to the 7 sages of ancient Mesopotamia, the Apkallu, as evidence. These semi-divine beings, often depicted with wings and beards, were said to have risen from the sea after the Great Flood. Their mission: to teach humans how to write, to build, to farm, to govern. They are often shown holding a cone and a handbag, the very same items seen in Assyrian reliefs and, mysteriously, echoed in distant lands. But Hancock goes further. He notes how similar stories appear across the globe. The Viracocha of the Andes, who came from the sea after a flood, bringing knowledge. The Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica, a feathered serpent who gave agriculture and astronomy. The Oans of Babylon, the civilizer gods of Polynesia. Over and over, the pattern repeats. After disaster, a figure appears. He is not a conqueror. He is a teacher. And in his hands, symbolically, If not literally, he carries something of great importance. Could that handbag be more than a literal item? Could it represent a toolkit of civilization? A collection of truths, skills, and symbols encoded into an image to survive across millennia? Hancock proposes that the image of the handbag is the ancient equivalent of a logo, a symbolic tag left behind to indicate, "We were here. We gave this. Remember us." Just as a modern corporation might brand its product with an emblem, so too might the sages of this lost world have branded the teachings they spread: astronomy, sacred geometry, agriculture, spiritual wisdom. And where they went, Gobekli Tepe, Sumer, Egypt, Mesoamerica, Polynesia, their symbol followed. If this is true, then the handbag becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes evidence not of aliens, not of gods, but of humans who once rose to greatness, fell to catastrophe, and then returned, bearing memory like a flame. It reframes human history, not as a linear climb from primitive to advanced, but as a cycle of rise, fall, and rebirth, a spiral. And in the center of that spiral, like a timeless icon, hangs the handbag. In this interpretation, we are not discovering the past. We are remembering it. The symbol has now taken us across continents, through temples, myths, and theories that stretch the imagination. And yet, even after all this, the handbag refuses to resolve itself. It remains unfinished, unclaimed, a riddle cradled in stone. But perhaps that is exactly its power. The handbag doesn't speak, it asks. It does not explain, it echoes. Some believe it was merely a vessel for pollen or incense. Others see a cosmic symbol, the uniting of sky and earth in a single sacred shape. Still others suggest it was a battery, a device, or the seal of an ancient civilization that flourished long before our textbooks begin. There are even those who claim the figure holding the bag was always a teacher, a guide, a bearer of light. What unites all these interpretations is not certainty but reverence. Each theory, whether grounded in archaeology or born of visionary speculation, recognizes that this shape means something, that it holds a gravitational pull on the human mind, that we are drawn to it not because we fully understand it, but because something inside us already knows. This is the paradox of symbols. Their power is not in what they reveal, but in what they activate. They are keys, not answers. Catalysts of memory. Think of it. A single form box, an arc, etched again and again by hands that never touched, in cultures that never met, under stars that shone on different ages. And yet, the message was the same. Carry what matters. Protect what is sacred. Remember what was once known. In an age of digital acceleration, where symbols have been reduced to logos and emojis, perhaps the ancient handbag reminds us of something deeper. That true meaning is not found in the fast and the loud, but in the persistent, in the quiet repetition of a form that waits for recognition, century after century. Maybe that's why we still carve it into documentaries, into blog posts, into digital reconstructions. Not because we've solved it, but because we sense that to forget it would be to lose a part of our story, a part of ourselves. So next time you see it on a pillar in Turkey, a wall in Nineveh, a carving in Chiapas, or a hieroglyph in Luxor, don't just ask, "What is it?" Ask, "What part of me does it awaken?" Because perhaps the handbag was never just a container of herbs or tools. Perhaps it was always a container of memory, and now the memory is waking up.